Customer demands compensation for 20 minutes of self-inflicted data outage. Working in mobile tech support, you encounter all sorts of issues. This particular call started fairly standard. A customer reported their mobile data wasn't functioning. The reported downtime was precisely 20 minutes. As I began troubleshooting, going through the usual steps, it became apparent very quickly what the problem was. The customer had, perhaps inadvertently, toggled off their cellular data option within their phone's settings menu. This is a common occurrence, and usually the customer has a moment of realization, maybe a chuckle, and says something along the lines of, "Oh, how silly of me, thanks for the help." This customer, however, was not one of those. Upon hearing that the issue was a setting on their own device, they immediately pivoted from seeking assistance to demanding recompense. They insisted that because their data service had been unavailable for a full 20 minutes, they were entitled to financial compensation for the disruption. Their tone was far from pleasant. They were quite rude and insistent, treating the situation as if we, the service provider, had somehow failed them or deliberately shut off their access. I spent several minutes patiently explaining that the service itself was active and functioning correctly on our end, and that the interruption was due to a setting they had changed on their personal device. I reiterated that this wasn't an outage caused by our network or infrastructure, but rather a configuration issue on their handset. They were having none of it. They repeatedly interrupted, raised their voice, and continued to demand compensation for the perceived loss of service time. It became clear they weren't going to accept the simple explanation that this was their mistake. Feeling a bit exasperated but also sensing an opportunity, an idea formed in my mind. I told the customer I would need to place them on a brief hold to consult with my manager regarding their request for compensation. I walked over to my supervisor's desk, quickly explained the situation. A customer turned off their own data and is now demanding money back for 20 minutes. My manager's initial reaction was one of disbelief and amusement, calling the customer's demand ridiculous. I then pitched my idea, outlining exactly how I plan to address the customer's demand using pure mathematics. My manager's eyes widened and a grin spread across their face. "Are you serious, Ami?" they asked, barely containing their laughter. "Absolutely," I confirmed. "Do it. Let me hop on call listening before you go back. I don't want to miss this." They quickly got set up to monitor the call. Returning to my station, I saw my manager give me a subtle thumbs up, indicating they were ready and listening. I took the customer off hold. "Alright, sir," I began, adopting a calm and professional tone. "I've just finished speaking with my manager, and I've managed to work something out for you regarding your request for compensation for the 20 minutes your data service was unavailable. Let's break this down precisely. Your monthly bill," I continued, "is $39.99. This covers 3 primary services: calls, texts, and data. To determine the value allocated to data, we can divide the total bill by 3, which comes out to approximately $13.33 per month for data service. Now, there are roughly 30 days in a month, so if we divide that monthly data cost by 30, we find that your data service costs about 44 pence per day. You reported your data was off for 20 minutes. For the purpose of this calculation, I'll round that up to a full hour to be generous. There are 24 hours in a day, so dividing the daily cost of 44 pence by 24 hours gives us the approximate cost per hour of your data service. That figure is roughly 1.8 pence per hour, so rounding up slightly, the compensation for 1 hour, which covers your 20-minute outage, would be approximately 2 pence. As I delivered this step-by-step breakdown, I glanced over at my manager. They had their hand clamped firmly over their mouth, their shoulders shaking with silent laughter. The customer on the other end was silent for a moment after I finished the calculation. Then the predictable explosion came. "Are you having a joke?" they bellowed into the phone. "No, sir," I replied evenly. "The math is quite clear. Based on your service plan and the duration of the outage you reported, rounded up, the calculated value of the service interruption is approximately 2 pence. There was another pause, longer this time. I could almost hear the gears grinding in their head as they processed the absurdity of demanding compensation only to be presented with this minuscule amount based on their own figures. Finally, grudgingly, they responded. Fine, they muttered. "Kanoti. Go on then, I'll take it, Kim." We processed the compensation, which likely involved some internal note or maybe a symbolic gesture. I don't recall the exact system mechanics for such a tiny amount, and ended the call. My manager and I shared a good laugh about it afterwards. Sometimes logic, even applied to ridiculous demands, is the most effective tool. Oh, the sweet taste of math applied to unreasonable demands. 2 pence. If you enjoyed this dose of tech support justice, do me a favor and like and subscribe. Former employer wants my scripts after letting me go. I was working as a contractor for a pretty large warehouse and customization operation. My contract was through another company, placing me on site as part of their IT support team. Things had been a bit tight lately, with sales dipping during the typical summer slump, and there was talk throughout the company about cost-cutting measures, including reducing staff and shifts. As a contractor, especially one of the more recent additions to the team, you could feel the pressure building. The IT manager called me aside and specifically asked me to demonstrate my value, to show why I should be kept on when others might be cut. This wasn't entirely unexpected given the climate. I had spent the first 3 months really digging into the recurring issues we face. About 80% of the common support tasks I encountered, I had managed to streamline significantly. I achieved this by reaching out to the software vendors directly, often outside of my shift hours when they were open, and learning the underlying fixes and procedures. I then took this knowledge and developed simple scripts to automate these repetitive tasks. These weren't developed on company time or company equipment. I used my own time and resources, keeping the scripts on my personal USB drive. Beyond the scripting, I also looked into hardware issues, specifically with the RF guns the warehouse relied on heavily. Instead of just replacing broken units outright, I took the time to learn how to repair them and, more importantly, identify which parts from older decommissioned models were compatible with the newer ones. This drastically reduced the turnaround time for getting functional guns back into the hands of the workers and saved the company money on replacement parts. I compiled all of these contributions, the scripts that automated daily tasks, the improved efficiency in RF gun repair, the time and money saved, and presented them to the IT manager as my case for retention. I felt I'd made a solid argument showcasing tangible value. The following week, I received a call from my contract manager. They informed me that despite my efforts and the value I demonstrated, the client company had decided not to renew my contract or extend my placement. Essentially, I was being let go from that specific assignment. Honestly, I was okay with it. The seasonal hiring period was approaching, and from past experience, the temporary hires brought in during that time, who often bypassed the usual drug tests and background checks, could make the work environment quite challenging. Moving on felt like it might be for the best. 2 days after receiving the notification that my assignment was ending, I got a call directly from the IT manager at the warehouse company. His tone was urgent. He wasn't calling to reconsider their decision, but to demand something specific: the scripts I had created. He stated they needed them to maintain the efficiency I had implemented. I reminded him that the company had never provided me with the tools or resources necessary for developing these kinds of solutions, and we were often told to use our own if needed. I explained that the scripts were never stored on their servers or any company computer. They were developed on my own time, using my own equipment, and kept on my personal USB drive. I also mentioned that, upon termination, I had been instructed to format my work computer's drive, which I had done, and since the scripts were not on that machine, they weren't affected by that process. I had, however, deleted them from my personal drive after being informed I was being let go, as they were created for that specific role, which I would no longer be performing. I had taken the precaution of reviewing my contract agreement to see if there were any clauses requiring me to hand over intellectual property or files created during the assignment. There was nothing that stipulated I had to provide personally developed tools or scripts created on my own time with my own resources. Furthermore, as a contractor, any such work would technically belong to my contracting company, not the client company, if it belonged to anyone other than myself, and my contracting company had no interest in them. The scripts' primary value was tied to my presence and understanding of their application within that specific environment, a presence the company had decided was not worth keeping. So, I calmly informed the manager that the scripts were not worth keeping me on staff for, and therefore I had deleted them when requested to format my drive as part of the termination procedure, implying they were on the work drive, which wasn't strictly true but served the purpose. I then added, perhaps with a touch of sarcasm, that they were welcome to keep the screwdriver set I had left in my desk drawer, so at least they would have one tool available in the office. Refused password reset, called link a virus, demanded manager, got roasted by own boss. My role involves implementing, training, and providing support for a proprietary web application developed by my company. Our client base tends to skew towards an older demographic, which often presents unique challenges, particularly when it comes to technical literacy and adaptability. One day I received a communication from a client who was encountering login issues. Their initial message was immediately laced with frustration and impatience. Client: I absolutely cannot get into my account. My login isn't working at all. This is utterly ridiculous. I've been trying for hours now and your system has locked me out. I responded promptly, aiming to resolve the issue as quickly and painlessly as possible. That's me. My sincere apologies for the inconvenience you're experiencing. I've just initiated a password reset for your account. You should receive an email momentarily containing a link that will allow you to securely set and save a new password. The client's response was not what I anticipated after providing the standard solution. Client: I don't want to set a new password. I liked my old password just fine. It's the same password I use for everything else and it's easy for me to remember. This immediately raised a red flag regarding basic security practices, but I focused on addressing the immediate need for access. Daimi, I understand that you preferred your previous password, but unfortunately, for security reasons, you will need to establish a new one in order to regain access to your account. Our system policies prevent the reuse of old password. Design the client: can't you just make my old password work again? Just reset it back to what it was. Me: no, I'm afraid our data security standards and protocols do not permit that. However, if you encounter any difficulty following the password reset link in the email, I would be happy to generate a random, secure password for you and provide it to you directly over the phone. Client: fine, do that then. Generate a password and just email it to me. Now we hit another security roadblock. Emailing plain text passwords is a major no-go. Me. Again, my apologies, but a core part of our security policy explicitly states that we cannot email passwords in plain text. This is for your protection. As I mentioned, I would be happy to call you directly and share the new password with you verbally over the phone. The client's frustration escalated further, shifting from the technical issue to perceived obstruction on my part. Client: why are you being so incredibly difficult? I just want my old password to work again. This is taking forever. Me: sir, I genuinely understand that this process is frustrating for you, and I sincerely want to help you regain access to your account. Have you had a chance to open the password reset email and click on the link that was sent? Client: no, that email looks like a virus. I'm not going to click on some suspicious link like that. This was a classic response born from a lack of familiarity with standard web procedures. I tried to reassure them. Me: I can absolutely assure you that it is not a virus. It is a standard hyperlink designed to take you to a secure page on our website. You simply need to click on it, and it will open a page in your web browser where you can easily set your new password. Their response was pure exasperation and a demand for escalation. Client: that's utterly ridiculous. That sounds like so much work. Why do you people make everything so hard? This should be simple. I want to speak to your manager right now. At this point, frankly, I was more than happy to hand this interaction off. My manager was already aware of the situation, as I had included them in the email thread from the start, anticipating potential difficulty. Me: no problem at all, sir. My manager is included on this email chain and is fully aware of the situation. They would be happy to assist you further. My manager stepped in. Diki Kal de Sendegar. Manager: hello. I understand you're having trouble logging in. How can I help? The client immediately launched into a tirade, directing their anger towards me. Client: your employee is incredibly rude, completely stupid, and utterly unhelpful. I just want to log in. I don't want to reset my password. I absolutely refuse to click on this virus she sent me. And this whole thing is taking forever and is completely ridiculous. My manager, bless them, has a very low tolerance for client abuse and unreasonable demands, but they maintained a professional tone. Manager: sir, with all due respect, in order to access your account following a lockout, you're going to need to meet us halfway and go through the process of changing your password. The client's final email response was delivered in all capital letters, dripping with contempt. Client: this is complete bullshit. I do not want to change my password. You are both incompetent idiots. My manager's response was a masterpiece of professional deflection while subtly increasing the pressure. Our manager: again, we sincerely apologize that this process is frustrating for you. Please let us know specifically what we can do to assist you in completing the password reset and regaining access to your account. Immediately after sending that, my manager added the client's direct superior, the director of their organization and the person who signed our contract, to the email thread. This was the turning point. The director's reply was swift and absolutely brutal. Client's boss to their employee, with us still CC'd, "Are you serious? These nice people are doing everything they possibly can to help you resolve your issue, and you are responding by abusing and belittling them? This behavior is an absolute embarrassment to our organization. You owe them both an immediate apology, and you need to stop complaining, follow their instructions to reset your password, and log in so you can finally get me that report that was supposed to be on my desk yesterday. The fact that you have seemingly wasted your entire day on this simple task is utterly ridiculous, and I guarantee this will be a significant point in your upcoming performance review." My manager and I were practically in tears reading that email, trying desperately to stifle our laughter. The client's boss didn't pull a single punch. It was a perfectly delivered, completely savage dressing down. The client did eventually reset his password and get logged in. However, he never offered an apology to either of us. We later found out when an email I sent to him bounced that he had been fired. Justice in this case was swift and satisfying. HR lady bypasses sysadmin on tiny Excel issue, escalates to VP, gets put in place. In pretty much every office environment, you encounter those specific individuals often referred to as special users. These are the people who seem to possess an almost supernatural inability to grasp even the most basic technical concepts. For them, every minor computer hiccup is an immediate critical emergency, and they operate under the firm belief that everything must function exactly as it always has, or they are rendered completely incapable of working. At my job, this archetype was perfectly embodied by one of the ladies in the human resources department. Given her role was primarily HR, her technical issues almost invariably boiled down to simple things: a printer error, a minor glitch in Excel or Word, or a problem that could be magically solved with a quick reboot. And as the system administrator, addressing these types of issues typically fell squarely under my responsibility. However, whenever she encountered a problem, regardless of how simple, she had a consistent routine. She would bypass my desk entirely, walk right past me, and go directly to either the programmer, the IT manager, or the network administrator to explain her issue. Every single time, without fail, they would either tell her she needed to talk to me, which she often reacted to with noticeable annoyance, or they would simply relay the information to me to fix anyway. A few weeks ago, she had a problem with a calculation in an Excel spreadsheet she was working on. The specific issue was that the final total was off by precisely one single penny. By chance, everyone else in the IT department happened to be out at lunch when she first encountered this, which for once forced her to approach me directly. I took a look at the spreadsheet and listened to her explanation. Immediately, based on the nature of the calculation and the small discrepancy, I told her it was almost certainly a simple matter of rounding up or down within the formula. I explained that Excel's rounding functions could easily cause such a minor difference in a total. My explanation did not suffice. She clearly wasn't satisfied with my diagnosis, likely because it came from me and not one of her preferred IT contacts. She essentially ignored my assessment and decided to wait until the others returned from their lunch break to seek a different opinion. As soon as the programmer was back, she returned to the IT area and went directly to him, skipping my desk once again. She presented him with her Excel calculation problem, the 1 penny discrepancy, and her insistence that something was fundamentally wrong with the software or the data. Predictably, the programmer, recognizing it as a standard support issue, and knowing it was my area, directed her back to me. He relayed that I was the person who handled these types of software function problems, and had the expertise to resolve it. Following this redirection, I sent her an email with a detailed breakdown. I showed her the specific formula, explained how the rounding function was applied, and demonstrated with a simple example how the calculation, when rounded to 2 decimal places for currency, resulted in the 1 penny difference she was seeing. It was a clear step-by-step explanation. Despite receiving this written, detailed explanation from me, she still wasn't satisfied. She continued to insist that the programmer needed to personally examine the spreadsheet and validate the calculation. She seemed unwilling to accept my explanation unless it was rubber stamped by someone else. My manager became involved in the email chain, responding to her persistent messages. He reiterated that the programmer was heavily involved in other critical projects, including an impending new website launch, and would look at her spreadsheet when he had the availability, effectively prioritizing the programmer's core development work over her penny problem. The manager also resented my original email explanation, reinforcing that the technical cause had already been identified and explained. Her frustration apparently boiled over when she realized the programmer wasn't dropping everything for her issue, and that the IT department was standing by my explanation. Unwilling to accept the situation, she decided to escalate the matter further, going over the heads of everyone in IT and complaining directly to the vice president of the company, claiming that we were not helping her and neglecting her urgent issue. The vice president, perhaps annoyed that a seemingly simple IT issue was reaching his desk, scheduled a meeting to get to the bottom of it. The meeting included the VP, our IT manager, myself, the sysadmin who had initially diagnosed it, and the HR lady who had brought the complaint. We all gathered and the VP asked for an explanation of the problem. I began to explain the situation from the technical side, describing the Excel spreadsheet, the specific calculation, and how the standard rounding function was resulting in the 1 penny difference she was so concerned about. I didn't get very far into my explanation. The vice president, who clearly understood the basic concept of rounding and quickly grasped the trivial nature of the discrepancy, cut me off. He turned his attention directly to the HR lady, a look of disbelief on his face. His exact words, delivered with palpable annoyance, were along the lines of, "You pulled me into a meeting for this? This is what you're escalating?" The meeting was incredibly short after that. The HR lady's attempt to bypass the proper support channels and escalate a minor, easily explained issue all the way to the VP backfired spectacularly. She was called out directly by senior management for wasting everyone's time over a single penny discrepancy caused by standard software functionality. My manager and I exchanged glances, barely suppressing our amusement. It was a deeply satisfying moment to see her attempt at sidestepping the sysadmin result in such a public rebuke from the top. A penny, people, a single penny escalated to the VP. The satisfaction here is immense. What's the smallest issue someone has ever tried to escalate past you? Put on paid leave after a $5 flash drive containing only a network driver was smashed. I work for a large corporation or institution where the nature of the data handled by users is such that accessing even a small subset could potentially lead to significant legal issues. As a result, the organization has implemented numerous security policies that often feel like extreme overkill. While I can appreciate the underlying intent to protect sensitive information, the practical application and strict enforcement of these rules sometimes border on the absurd. Despite this, the overall effort to enhance security isn't entirely without merit. An important piece of context for this story is the setup of our user workstations. All external USB ports on the computers have physical blocks inserted and super glued in place, preventing any external devices from being easily connected. There is, however, an internal USB connector located inside the computer case. This setup is part of the stringent security measures regarding portable storage devices, a topic that has been the subject of previous tales. So the day in question began like any other Friday morning around 8 a.m. I was at my desk waiting for support tickets to come in or for something to require my attention. I received a call reporting that a user was unable to log into their computer. Understandably, they couldn't submit a formal ticket through the system because they couldn't log in the first place. The computer used network login, meaning there were a multitude of potential causes for the issue, from network connectivity problems to software glitches or even just user error. You know how users can be with checking simple things like power cords. I headed up to the user's cubicle to investigate. Upon arrival, I confirmed that the computer was physically plugged in and powered on. The machine booted up to the login screen, but it was clear there was no network connection. I swapped the user's network cable with their neighbor's to rule out issues with the cable or the wall jack. The neighbor's computer connected just fine using the user's jack and cable. This confirmed the issue was specific to the user's machine or its connection. I logged into the local administrative account on the problematic computer and verified that there was absolutely no internet or network connectivity visible from within the operating system. Checking the device manager revealed the core problem. The driver for the onboard network adapter appeared to be corrupted or otherwise non-functional. Attempts to roll back the driver to a previous version were unsuccessful. This diagnosis presented a significant hurdle due to the organization's security policies. To install a new network driver, I would need to get the driver file onto the computer. Given the blocked external USB ports, the only practical way was via a flash drive connected to the internal port. This, however, required explicit authorization from the cybersecurity department for the use of a portable storage device. Furthermore, accessing the internal USB port meant opening the computer case, which was physically locked. The key for these case locks was held by my supervisor, requiring his sign-off and physical handover of the key. On top of all this, I needed to create a formal ticket in the system detailing the issue and the planned resolution steps, even though the user couldn't log in to initiate it. Understanding the process, I went back to the IT Batcave and downloaded the necessary network driver file for the user's computer. I emailed the driver file to my boss with a note asking him to place it onto a thumb drive for me. I then walked over to his desk to discuss the authorization process. "Hey boss," I said, "I just emailed you a network driver that I need to get onto a thumb drive. I also need you to submit my authorization form to cybersecurity for the use of a portable storage device. Yes, this really required 2 separate forms or processes." So, we initiated the request with cybersecurity for the usage of a USB storage device. The request form detailed the estimated time for the work, 15 minutes, and the reason, copying network drivers to restore network connectivity to the computer. We waited. After about half an hour, there was no response from cybersecurity. The head of IT, sensing the delay, decided to call down to cybersecurity to get an estimated time for the approval. Around 10 minutes later, the request finally came back. It was denied. The stated reason, "Just email the file." This response confirmed our suspicion that the person reviewing the request was, to put it mildly, completely out of their depth. This individual had a history of misinterpreting or haphazardly enforcing rules they didn't fully understand. Before taking this role in cybersecurity, they had no relevant experience in the field and lacked even a basic understanding of IT operations. Their typical day consisted of helping users reset passwords using an automated tool. The idea that they would tell us to just email the file when the computer had no network connection was mind-bogglingly incompetent. My boss had to call this person to patiently explain the situation, that the computer was offline and could not receive an email. After several frustrating minutes on the phone with them, my boss realized it was futile and had to go upstairs to speak with the head of the cybersecurity department to explain why their subordinate's decision was illogical and preventing necessary repairs. Approximately half an hour later, the approval from cybersecurity finally arrived in my email inbox. Simultaneously, my boss texted me to come grab the signed authorization form from him, along with his spare set of case keys and a USB drive containing the driver. Armed with both the required authorization form for using a portable storage device and the physical key to open the computer case, I returned to the user's desk. The user wasn't there, but she had left a note saying she was making a quick run to Starbucks and would be back shortly. I proceeded to power down her computer and carefully tilt the tower onto its side so I could access the screws and open the case to reach the internal USB port. As I was standing there, holding the small flash drive and preparing to open the case, someone suddenly approached, yanked the drive right out of my hand, tossed it onto the floor, and immediately started stomping on it repeatedly. Stunned, I demanded, "What the hell do you think you're doing?" "USB devices are banned," he replied curtly, continuing his destructive act. Whoa, I exclaimed, trying to process what just happened. First of all, I have an authorization form from cybersecurity explicitly allowing me to use this device. Second, that's company property you just destroyed. And third, you just deliberately destroyed potential evidence. I immediately pulled out my phone and called my boss, who, as luck would have it, was still up in the cybersecurity office area, perhaps discussing the earlier approval issue. The people from cybersecurity overheard my frantic explanation of what had just transpired over the phone. Hearing about the deliberate destruction of a USB drive on company premises, especially by someone claiming to enforce policy, prompted cybersecurity to open a file regarding the mishandling of suspect data, specifically the act of smashing potential evidence. Around 11 a.m., roughly 3 hours after the initial call came in, my boss returned to the user's desk. He had a different flash drive containing the network drivers and, incredibly, yet another stack of new forms that I would need to complete to document the work and the incident. I ended up spending the next hour sitting with cybersecurity personnel, filling out extensive paperwork related to the destruction of a trivial $5 flash drive. I provided a detailed statement about the data mishandling incident, the stomping, and had to provide a formal statement responding to the accusation of using a USB storage device despite having the authorization form in hand. In total, it took over 3 hours and 15 minutes of time from at least 2 IT personnel, myself and the head of IT, facilitating the approvals and managing the fallout, simply to reinstall a network driver on a single computer. Adding another layer of absurdity, because the flash drive was physically destroyed, the organization now has to pay a data recovery specialist an unknown amount of money to attempt to recover data from the smashed drive. This is being done to definitively prove that there was nothing malicious on it, even though it only ever contained a legitimate network driver downloaded from a trusted source. The reason I'm currently on paid administrative leave, because they cannot definitively confirm what I assume was on the flash drive, specifically because it was destroyed before cybersecurity could perform their standard scan and verification procedure. Cybersecurity informed me that as long as the data recovery process confirms that the drive contained only the network driver I specified, or if they are unable to recover anything at all, I will be cleared. Had the drive not been smashed, cybersecurity could have simply scanned its contents in a controlled environment, which would have taken perhaps 8 seconds. Instead, I get to collect paychecks while external data recovery experts spend time and resources attempting to salvage data from a physically damaged, inexpensive piece of hardware that held nothing but a driver file. The good news is I did get to go home early that Friday due to the incident and subsequent investigation. Looking on the bright side, I now have an unexpected long weekend ahead. Perhaps I'll use the time to finally binge watch Stargate from the beginning. Destroy company property, get the admin paid leave. Sounds like peak tech support. If this made you laugh, hit like and subscribe. Let me know your favorite tale from today.